What's the first significant foreign description of Taiwan and its indigenous people? It's not quite as far back as you might guess. It's from 1603. A remarkable Chinese man named Chen.
The Taiwan History Podcast, Formosa Files, is made possible through the generous sponsorship of the Frank C. Chen Foundation. Formosa Files.
Hey folks, today we're kicking off a 10-part series, not in order, not the next 10 weeks is all going to be this, but there will be a 10-part series in connection with the 400th anniversary of the arrival of the Dutch in 1624. And it's also in celebration of an epic historical novel we're publishing. It's an English translation of A Tale of Three Tribes in Dutch Formosa by Taiwanese doctor and author Chen. You've probably seen me do some Instagram videos going out to places, and then at the end we have this coming soon book. It's that's the book.
Oh, it's a great story, and one of both depth and breadth. The details and also the background stories. Read it, and you'll have a great grounding in Taiwan's founding history, better than what you'd get from a pile of textbooks.
Yeah, the Three Tribes novel covers the 1640s to the 1660s, but today we're going to go back earlier to before the Dutch arrived, before the Chinese arrived, before the Chinese settled, before the Spanish. Today we're looking at the first foreign description of Taiwan's indigenous people, and it's an account from 1603.
First written account, because there were oral accounts. Chinese people, especially from Fujian across the strait, they had visited. They were trading, fishing, sometimes temporary residents.
Also like a popular hangout for pirates, pirate fleets.
Yes, not big writers, those pirates, so we don't have written accounts from them. But still, 1603 is still incredibly late. I think it's probably the most amazing thing about Taiwanese history, this lack of record in Chinese records.
Yeah. I mean, a large island near the coast of China and also right on busy trade routes.
Yes, trade routes, plural. The main one down through the Taiwan Strait to Southeast Asia and all the way to India. Another route went from Fujian, China to Okinawa and then Japan. It was a roundabout route during a time of trade prohibitions.
So Chen, the first one would be the famous Chen that we all know, Erdong Chen, and the character De, right? He was a Chinese scholar with a particular interest in language and the history of language. He was also a military man. I've seen him described as a strategist. So, a man of both sword and pen.
Sword and, sorry to be pedantic, calligraphy brush.
Fair enough.
And this scholar and a soldier was also a big traveler, one of the most widely traveled literati of the Ming Dynasty.
He was part of a 1603 Chinese expedition to suppress pirates who were using Taiwan as a base to raid the Chinese coast. And he wrote an account, Dongfang Ji, an account of the Eastern barbarians, or a record of Formosa. So Dongfang was the Chinese name for Taiwan back then.
Yeah, so Europeans called it Formosa, but the name Taiwan was not yet in use. That only came after the Dutch established a small settlement in 1624 at modern-day Tainan. But this place was, I don't know how to read it. If you just read it in English, it would be Ta Yoyen. But apparently this indigenous place name, the indigenous people pronounced it Taiwan, and that's from what we get the present-day Chinese name of the island.
Or maybe that's how the Chinese said the Aboriginal word, right?
Right, yeah.
We'll talk more about the expedition and the author Chen later. Let's get to the text itself.
Yes, and we can pretty much read it all, and we'll do it in order.
This record of Formosa is a short text. We can't call it a book or even a booklet. It's fewer than 1,500 characters, so just over 1,000 words in English. It's a report. It's an article.
And it was attached to a collection of essays and poems. And for a long time, this record of Formosa was considered a lost text, but it was rediscovered in 1955.
The author, somewhat annoyingly, doesn't name the exact places he went to, nor the tribal names, but his observations are very similar to those of later Dutch writers, such as the missionary George Candidius, who were in the Tainan area among the Siraya indigenous people.
The expedition was in Taiwan for about 3 weeks, January to February 1603, and they set off from Jinmen Island. That's near the city of Xiamen, coastal Fujian. If you draw a straight line, it would take you to Taichung in central Taiwan.
Oh, John, you worked in a reference to
Yes.
Taichung. We so rarely do that. We neglect poor Taichung on Formosa Files, don't we?
Yeah. I don't know if he got up to the Taichung area or another reference, but he was certainly in modern day Tainan. So his account sadly lacks details of locations and of fighting the pirates. I want more of that, or just some of it. The account is mostly describing the details of indigenous culture. Right, Eric, you read the text and I'll interrupt you with
I would assume clever explanations and deep insights.
not really, just something to break up the monologue, give you a chance to take a breath.
Very kind. Okay, the text begins. The Eastern barbarian people have an unclear origin.
Okay, he's referring to the indigenous inhabitants of Taiwan.
Chen continues. They are numerous and diverse, forming separate communities, each consisting of either 1,000 or 500 to 600 people. There are no tribal chiefs.
No tribal chiefs. An overstatement, but still basically true. Surprisingly unhierarchical societies. At around this time, the Japanese sent a couple of missions looking for the island's leader to submit to Japan, but.
Yeah, I remember this. They send the Japanese down to take us to your leader, and he must bow before. And they couldn't find a leader with sufficient authority.
Yeah, we did an episode on that story, season 2, episode 10. Christian Samurai, Japan's katana diplomacy in Taiwan.
Yeah, that's a cool episode. So Chendi continues. These people, so the Formosans, are naturally brave and fond of fighting. Without other tasks, they spend their time running day and night. Their feet develop thick soles, able to walk on thorns as if on flat ground. And they run as fast as horses.
Though there were no horses in Taiwan at this time.
When disputes arise between neighboring communities, they go to war, but their battles only last until an arranged time. Despite mutual killings and injuries, the next day they forget the grudges and resume interactions as usual. When they cut off an enemy's head, they strip the flesh and preserve the bones, hanging the skull at their doors. Those who display the most skulls are called heroes.
Head hunting, not a popular subject to bring up in these sensitive times. I mean, you won't see academic papers or academic books on the subject of headhunting, but it was a common part of the culture among Taiwan's indigenous people.
It certainly was. Continuing, the land is warm, and they wear no clothes in winter or summer. Women wear grass skirts that only barely cover their lower bodies.
Well, as you said, it is a warm climate.
There are no rituals of bowing, greeting, or kneeling. They have no calendar or written script, measuring time by the phases of the moon. 10 moons make a year, but they often lose track of years. Even the elderly cannot recall their age. In trading, they use knotted ropes to record transactions.
Knotted ropes to record transactions. Interesting.
This is quite common, actually. I've seen knotted ropes
Yes.
used all over the world. They have no paddy fields, but practice slash and burn agriculture, growing millet. They plant crops when the mountain flowers bloom, and when the millet is ripe, they pull the grain from the stalks. The grain is slightly longer than that of China and has a sweet fragrance. They brew wine by fermenting bitter herbs mixed with rice, and sometimes produce excellent wine. Strong drinkers can consume an entire dough.
Okay, impressive. A dough is a measurement of about 10 liters.
Whoa. And How do you know that exactly? How many doughs of wine have you been drinking of late?
Hey, funny guy. No, from living and working, my friend, living and working in place names with the character Do. I worked in Doliao, capital city of Yunlin County, central Taiwan, and lived in Donan, a town also in Yunlin County.
Ah, so Donan is literally south of Do.
Yes, but it's actually west southwest of Doliao if we want to be
Once
pedantic.
again, pedantic. Okay, back to Chendi's account of Formosa. During festivals, they gather in circles, drinking from bamboo tubes, but do not serve dishes.
Oh, that's dangerous. Don't forget to eat.
They sing songs while dancing, their mouths making woo woo sounds like melodies. Men cut their hair short and let it hang down a few inches, while women do not.
Yeah, just a note that jump from describing festivities to describing appearance and other such jumps that Eric's making, that's the original material. It lacks transitions, segues, tends to abruptly change subjects.
Men pierce their ears and women file their teeth as adornments. Women at the age of 15 or 16 remove 2 teeth from the sides of their mouths.
Strange.
Another change of subject here. Their land is abundant in bamboo, growing tall and thick to about 10 jiang. Jiang, what's that?
I've not drunk. I mean, I've not lived or worked in a place. No, I don't know. I'll check it now. Okay, it's 3.2 meters.
Wait a second. So 10 jiang, 32 meters, over 100 feet tall bamboo? Is that even possible?
It's an exaggeration, but not by much. I've seen bamboo groves of about 25 meters in height.
So Chen writes, they build houses from bamboo and thatch the roofs with grass. Families share large houses. Slightly bigger houses are used as public meeting halls where unmarried young men live. To marry, a man sends a pair of agate beads to a woman he desires.
Agate, a semi precious stone.
Not jade and not marble.
Now, it's hard to describe. It's got a fine grained texture, banded patterns, a wide range of colors and patterns.
Yeah, you've probably, if you're in Taiwan, you've probably seen them at one of those shops where they've got crystals and other stuff, and then,
Hmm.
they're pretty. So if the woman accepts the pair of agate beads, the man visits her house at night, plays a mouth harp to call her, and spends the night with her. The mouth harp is made of thin iron, and when bitten, it produces a sound like zhang zhang.
Bitten. Could be a translation problem there. I'm not really picturing that. Hmm.
Yeah, I guess he puts it in his teeth somehow to create tension, and then
Ah,
doing,
yeah.
doing, must be.
Okay. Hmm.
The woman, hearing the sound, allows the man to stay, but he leaves before dawn without seeing her parents.
Huh.
This nocturnal relationship continues for years until the woman bears a child. Only then does she bring the man home to meet her parents, and they formally marry.
Call me cynical, but I think the parents might have guessed by this point.
And this is a huge contrast, and it must have been a huge contrast to Chen Di, because Chinese customs were very much not like this, much stricter.
Good point. Yes, in Chinese society, women had to be virtuous, and the parents chose the husband, and the new couple might not see each other until the wedding day.
All right, continuing here, the man lives in his wife's home, supporting her parents until their death. Therefore, having daughters is valued more than sons, as daughters ensure the continuation of the family while sons do not.
Yeah, the matrilineal, so the line through the women, the matrilocal, so living with the woman's family. Of some tribes here in Taiwan, like the Saraya, yeah, always shocked the Chinese.
Turning to the subject of death, Chen says, when someone dies, drums are beaten, and the family cries over the body, which is laid on the ground, surrounded by blazing fire to dry. Afterward, the body is left uncovered inside the house without being placed in a coffin.
Dear me, that reminds me of mummified corpses I saw in Papua New Guinea back in the 1980s.
A little unsettling. Then he also writes, when the house collapses, they rebuild it, and the remains are buried under the foundation. If the house is not rebuilt, the body is left unburied.
I'm glad that custom died out.
Okay, when working the land, they do not speak or fight. Men and women work together silently in the fields and mountains. On the road, the younger ones stand aside to let the older ones pass without exchanging words. Even when Chinese people insult them, they do not get angry.
He's describing them, despite being headhunters, as quite civilized people.
And here's something that reminds me of what Dutch missionary Candidius described a few decades later. Chen writes, "They believe that if they do not return to their original state after the harvest, the heavens and spirits will not bless them with abundant crops."
Return to their original state, buck naked, without a single piece of clothing, that means.
That was the tradition, yeah. Women work hard, while men are generally idle.
Quick, let's skip over that bit.
We don't need to because Chendi does it for us. The next line is, "Theft is strictly forbidden, and those who steal are executed. Therefore, at night, doors are left unlocked."
Doors left unlocked. Well, yeah, the young men need to make those secret nighttime visits, don't they?
Right, right. The community has basic tools, but no furniture like tables or chairs. They sit on mats on the ground. They cultivate a variety of beans, sesame, and Job's tears, which cure fevers and other ailments.
Job's tears, that's a kind of grain, isn't it?
Yeah. However, they do not grow wheat. Their vegetables include onions, ginger, sweet potatoes, and taro, and they have few other crops. Their fruits include coconuts, persimmons, Buddha's hand citrus. What's the other word we use for that? Custard apple?
No, this one is different from that. This actually looks like fingers. It's a yellow color, orange. It's unusual.
Okay. I'll find a picture and put it in
Find a
the
picture,
show
yeah.
notes, yeah. And sugarcane. They raise cats, dogs, pigs, and chickens, but do not have horses, donkeys, cattle, sheep, geese, or ducks.
And no oxen, those water buffaloes, the Dutch would bring those in from the Dutch East Indies.
The wild animals include tigers, bears, leopards, and deer.
Spot the odd one out there.
Well, as far as I know, no tigers except on the flag of the short-lived Republic of Formosa.
Right, tigers very much part of the Chinese culture later on. But no, there are no tigers, were no tigers in Taiwan. Even the leopard is a pretty small one, the clouded leopard.
Now extinct, unfortunately. The island is rich in deer, which roam in large herds. People are skilled at hunting them with spears. The spear, made of bamboo with an iron tip, is 5 feet long and very sharp. Hunters carry these with them at all times. A single strike can bring down a deer or a tiger.
This writer has a tiger phobia.
Yeah, like that Chinese traveler, remember Yu Yonghe from the 1690s, the end of the 1600s? He had that snake phobia. Every 5 minutes, he's talking about hearing snakes, seeing snakes.
Yeah, priceless. Yes.
Snakes.
Great stuff. The next part is interesting.
Deer hunting is strictly regulated, with no private hunting allowed. In winter, when the deer emerge in groups, 100 or more hunters form a circle around them, driving the animals into the center and striking them down with their spears. They bring in piles of deer meat to feed the entire community. The excess meat is dried and preserved, and they also dry the deer tongues, genitals, and tendons. Deer hides and antlers are piled up to the rafters. The deer are tamed and grow accustomed to humans, becoming familiar companions. Well, he just says that they're murdering them, and then he says they're tame. I don't get that.
Well, you have some young ones and they bring them up.
Anyway, he says these people have a deep love for deer, even eating the partially digested grass found in their intestines, which they call 100 grass paste. The Chinese find this revolting, but the indigenous people cannot get enough of it.
Oh, partially digested grass found in their intestines. Oh, disgusting.
It kind of works for me as a vegetarian.
Oh,
They
come
eat
on.
pork, but do not eat chicken, allowing their chickens to roam freely. They only pluck the feathers from the tails to make decorative flags. They shoot pheasants and pluck their tail feathers as well. When they see Chinese people eating chicken or pheasant, they are disgusted and often vomit.
Oh, I love that. Okay, very nice symmetry here. Before he said that Chinese recoiled in horror at the Siraya food, but here, he turns it around, perhaps exaggerated, but he wants to make a point. Different folks have different customs, different opinions, and for each other, the normal might seem strange. So, yeah, I like this Chen fellow. He's not just dismissing the natives as hopeless primitives.
He continues, despite living on an island, they are not skilled in boat making and fear the sea. They fish only in streams and never travel far by sea.
Yeah, that's always struck me as odd. The Aborigines losing their boat skills. I mean, they were once good sailors, yeah, but something of a lost art for many.
The account of Formosa finishes with this. In the early Yongle period, so that's the early 15th century, when the eunuch Zhonghe sailed the seas and communicated with foreign peoples, the eastern barbarians fled and did not agree to treaties. As a result, they were given a copper bell to wear around their necks like a dog's collar. To this day, they still consider it a treasure. What?
What? Yeah. What the heck is that?
Yeah, seriously.
Okay, so Zhang He, this famous eunuch mariner who sailed all the way over to the Middle East, according to the Ming official histories, he never actually visited the island of Taiwan. So this sounds just like a story. A funny one for the Chinese. You've got the indigenous people of Taiwan hiding, and then later, I assume, but I don't know by whom, they're given brass bells to hang around their necks like animals, but they keep the bells as treasures to be handed down through the generations. Huh.
Brass bells, perhaps maybe brought in by traders. Maybe they thought they were cool because they hadn't seen brass. They certainly didn't wear them around their necks while they were out hunting deer.
Right. Yeah. The Chinese traded things like those agate beads, which we mentioned before as gifts for dating, porcelain, there was cloth, salt, metal products. And in return, these Chinese traders that turned up, they would get deer products, meat, skins, horns. Up in northern Taiwan, sulfur was an important trading good.
I wonder how accurate some of Chendi's account is. There must have been some translation problems between Sarai and Chinese, and Chen wasn't there that long.
3 weeks, I think, and I think some Fujian traders semi-permanently lived in the area. They would act as translators, I guess. But yeah, would have been less than perfect communication.
And although Chen is reporting firsthand, he's also passing on secondhand accounts that are very possibly exaggerated or even inaccurate.
Yes, yes. But all in all, I think it's a pretty accurate account. You couldn't ask for a better guy to write it because we're dealing with a seasoned traveler, a thinking man, and a man of action who has been in other wild areas.
And he was kind of a local. Chen was a native of Lianjiang County in Fujian Province, the coastal area near the Mazu Islands, which is still technically part of the Republic of China.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and he was near the city of Fuzhou, an important port, including trade with Okinawa, which took sailors past northern Taiwan, Danshui, Geelong, were visited sometimes as part of this trade route.
And the young Chen Di passed an imperial exam, the Shutai, when he was 19.
Yeah, that's the prefectural one. After that, you go to the provincial capital for an exam, and then the next one would be Scholar Elite. You go to Beijing for an exam.
Which he didn't do.
Seems to have been too much of an independent thinker. For example, he didn't want to regurgitate commentaries on Confucius and such. He was interested in martial matters and martial arts, and he went into the military. He was involved in fighting pirates along the southeastern China coast. This was decades before his Taiwan trip. And his last posting was as a garrison commander along the Great Wall. He retired early in his 40s to pursue personal research interests and travel. And when he had the chance to visit Taiwan as a military advisor, I think he was about 61 years old.
That is quite a life. And the guy seems quite gutsy.
Yeah, and the result of his trip was a brief but important document, and as such, it should be better known.
Although, to be fair, it is cited, referenced by academics.
Yeah, but the treatment it gets is sometimes rather dull. It's not taken as a report from a pirate hunting expedition to a fabled mysterious island, not given a romantic treatment, but rather a lot of emphasis on Chinese imperial discourses and otherness. What frames are the Chinese using to describe the indigenous people?
You are well known for your dislike of certain academic phrasings. We should mention the pirates.
Oh, yes. There was piracy over a very long period. It was especially bad in the mid 1500s. We're looking at 1603. So, this punitive expedition was launched from Jinmen, and it is described as ridding the island of Japanese pirates who have been raiding the South China coast.
But they're not really Japanese.
No, it was a blanket name, these Wako pirates that raided China's coast. There were Koreans, quite a few Japanese, but mostly Chinese. It was very multicultural. But down in Fujian, yeah, we're talking mostly about Chinese pirates.
And we don't have records of pirate hunting details. We just know that it was basically a success, and the indigenous people were grateful for the pirate eradication. And because they were happy, they gave the Chinese deer meat and wine, a friendly reception led by a chieftain that Chen calls Da Mingla. And this was in present day Anping, Tainan City.
Yeah, and this chieftain, perhaps a source of information for Chen.
Yeah. Okay, time to wrap things up. A strangely unknown island of Formosa in 1603, but it won't be too long before Taiwan's thrust into regional and global affairs.
Right. The Dutch have just founded the Dutch East India Company, the VOC. And that very year, 1603, we see the first permanent Dutch trading post in Indonesia established. It was in Java. And the Dutch are determined to break into the China trade.
Yeah, they were quite envious of the Portuguese, who had a little head start there for a while. Okay, as you said, the Dutch are determined to break into China trade. They will come to Taiwan, 1624. We're going to cover this story in the next episode of our series, celebrating the 400th anniversary of their arrival here. Thanks so much for listening to Formosa Files. Please do rate us on whatever podcast platform you use. I'm Eric Michael Smith.
I'm John Ross. Bye.